University was a super fun time for me. I'm actually debating going back. I would love to do my master's degree, but school isn't exactly what you'd call normal right now. And I'm not very good with the whole learning online thing. I was a huge geek in university, and it only accentuated that. But it also gave me this larger scope of the world. Part of my degree is in Asian studies. I primarily focused in Japanese language, culture, and history. I even wrote my final thesis on the depiction of women in manga by women artists and how that compares to the depiction of women written by men. But some of my favorite classes were the film classes, which I actually find of strange because I don't like movies. I actually don't go to movies. And maybe it's just that I don't enjoy the North American style film because I actually really enjoy East Asian cinema. My favorite film is probably Okuribito, which in English translates to Departures. And at the time, it was so controversial in Japanese culture that distributors would not release it inside Japan until it had reached a commercial and global success when it was released at the Montreal World Film Festival. It follows Daigo Kobayashi through a journey of self-discovery and growth when his dream of playing the cello professionally is absolutely crushed when the orchestra is disbanded. So he ends up moving back to his hometown and finds his calling in the most unlikely of professions. He becomes a mortician, or a nokanshi, who is responsible for ritually washing and dressing the body of the deceased for burial or cremation. Usually cremation. You need to understand that in Japan, death is taboo. It's seen as impure or unclean, and so is anybody who is associated with it. It heralds back to the time when Japan still had a caste system in place. First you had the samurai, and then you had the farmers, and then you had the artisans, and the merchants were the lowest. But really they weren't. There was still another class below that, an untouchable class. A class called the Barakumin, or Eda, which is the hamlet or village people and pollution abundant. They primarily worked with animal carcasses or the dead. So they had jobs like butchers or executioners or morticians. And the discrimination against them was so large that it is illegal now to discriminate against those family lines. Unfortunately, it still happens, and that prejudice exists today. When somebody dies in Japan, families will place a notice outside of their house to alert neighbors and friends that the family is in mourning, but also that the household is in a state of pollution. Visitors and mourners are given a handkerchief and a bag of salt to purify them, and also so they don't take any contamination home with them. You can actually see this in the film. When Kobayashi and the NK agents enter a household, this sign is always prominently displayed in front of the house. But Kobayashi faces discrimination and rejection throughout the entire film, not just from people within his hometown, but also from within his own home. Initially, the people welcomed him warmly and happily, only to be rejected by his childhood friends. It's amazing how millennia-old beliefs still hold power, how they still play a part in people's everyday lives. One of the most heartbreaking scenes in this movie is when he faces rejection from his wife. She's literally screaming at him to not touch her because she is unclean. It's devastating. When you get down to it, these beliefs and prejudice may stem from the ancient myths surrounding purification and death. The underworld is seen as unclean. This is first seen with the death of Izanami. Not only is her appearance so hideously grotesque and disgusting that her husband Izanagi flees from her, but he also purifies himself by washing immediately after. And the idea of impurity is always alluded to in the banishment of Susanoo as well, which may be seen as justification of the exile and prejudice against those who are associated with death. The idea of purity and purification is seen throughout the entire film, because in an attempt to rid himself of the contamination, he goes to a public bathhouse where he vigorously scrubs himself clean. Bathing is an important part of daily Japanese life. I mean, not only in the sense of purity, like washing before you enter a shrine, but also in equality. When you bathe, you are nude. And in that nudity, you are equal. There is no defined status, which is sort of similar to tea ceremony as well, when participants leave their status at the door. The point is, in this sento or bathhouse, Kobayashi finds acceptance. The elderly woman that runs the place, who he's known since childhood, openly welcomes him instead of turning him away. I love this movie so much. It is heartfelt and beautiful, and I honestly think that everybody should watch it. It's one of the main reasons that I got so interested in Japanese culture and history outside of just manga and anime. It's why I approach everything with a critical eye, to really dig into other cultures and societies, because they're all equally and uniquely fascinating. So let me know if you're interested in hearing me ramble on about any other East Asian cinema or culture or history. And don't forget to subscribe. Cheers!
どうした